My name is Barbara Poole, and I am a visual artist living in Lowell, Massachusetts. Hi! Welcome to my studio. We're making garments and accessories primarily out of merino wool and fine silks, luxurious materials. My background is in painting. I began, I'm not going to say how long ago, but it was a while ago, and I got my undergrad degree from museum school and Tufts University. There I studied photography and jewelry making. From there, I went on to paint. I left the museum school and continued to paint, but also discovered at that time there was a large market crash and I needed to earn a living. And I went into working for what at the time was Jordan Marsh, doing displays. I would design the windows, design the store fixture. Designing stores is what I did for quite a few years. But my love was always to get back to painting. And I went back to Massachusetts College of Art and Design. And I got my master's in art education because at the time I thought, well, I'll go into teaching. But while I was there getting that degree, I rediscovered my art. And I started to paint full-time, and full-time with a vengeance. My paintings are narrative, all about the stories that are in my head or the stories that I piece together from, I'm a big reader from books and from television shows. Mostly I love mysteries. So my paintings all have an air of mystery. And then I would reference art history a lot in my work. Every time I'd have a show, I would go through a period that I would call post-artum. After we'd finish a show, I'd be all done. I'd be sitting afterwards. I'd look around at the art. I'd think, oh my God, I'm never going to paint again. I'm totally exhausted. I have no brains. I have no thought. I'm never going to be creative again. And hence post-artum. I would do something creative during that time period that had nothing to do with painting, because painting is filled with history and it's filled with anxiety, and you're always comparing yourself. Where do you fit in the lexicon of history? And so I'd do something that was completely opposite. So one of those times my children had given me a kit to make a scarf out of felt, out of wool, out of raw wool. And I fell in love with the process. It was the closest thing that I'd ever experienced to painting. If you look really closely, you can see all that puckering is little bits of fiber, very thin little bits of fiber right here, that have come through and are grabbing onto the fabric and causing it to ruche and also to lock down onto each other. Very, very different. And the circle dresses, most of my dresses, unless it has pockets, because I usually only put pockets on one side because no woman has ever said, can you pad my hips? So what we're working on right now is one of my dresses from my new line called the Holy line, which is Holey. And the dress will have openings on it, hence Holy. And the way it begins is we start with a resist, because that's the plastic that's underneath here. And then the silk is laid over it and stitched down on the sides. We're not stitching for holding it together. The stitching is merely to keep the fabric from moving. What will eventually hold this whole dress together is just the wool. We will remove the thread afterwards. That's why they are created, I consider them made seamlessly. There will be no seams when we're done. We will make them disappear. After we get the seams all stitched, the next step is to cover and the stitching with wool where the fabric is, so that the wool will act as the glue to hold it together. And then we start to lay wool out on this so that we can create movement. In other words, most garments would have darts in them or other stitching to create the shape and the form. For me, I'm going to use the wool because the wool will shrink in the direction in which I lay it down, so that way if I lay it in a certain way, I can create the illusion of a waist, the illusion of a bust, just with the wool and no stitching. So we lay down the wool very lightly, and we lay it down. It's a method called shingling. We're just off the top here, I'm just pulling little tufts all the way down the side. And we're going to do this on both sides of the dress too. But we do one side, we wet it out, and then we do the other side. See, with paint, you start with pigments. You take oil or acrylic or some sort of base to hold the pigment together. This is, out of the ground pigment, dirt. And you push it around with a stick with animal hairs attached to it. And you put it on a piece of paper or canvas or whatever, wood. And you can create whole worlds that become three-dimensional. You can walk in. And what I discovered with felt, I could do the same thing. The exact same thing. I could create things that were flat, or I could create things that were three-dimensional. Now, in order to really give it a cinched waist feeling, move this down just a tad more. We're going to do cross hatching with the wool to make a lattice, if you will. Wool is a protein-based fiber, and you will look at it under a microscope. There are scales on each individual piece of fiber. They look like scales, and when they get wet and are exposed to an alkaline solution, which is soap, they expand and open, and that's how the felting process works. Because these expanded scales will behave like fish hooks. They will travel through the silk, the substrate, and encounter another piece of wool and start to hook onto each other like Velcro. That's felting. Once again, at this stage, we want to make sure everything that we put down here, because we can just lift it all off. We want to make sure it stays right on the dress. So we put a net on to create another barrier to prevent the wool from moving in the initial stage. We'll take this off after the first roll. We will roll a total of probably 4 times. A lot of the fabrics that I use in my work and the felting process, the part that the wool travels through, I began by using a lot of recycled fabrics, and then I moved into using new fabrics and also doing hand dyeing. Like this dress here is all hand dyed, and it's with the technique they call shibori dyeing, and you can see like those look like little pearls. That's what it's supposed to, a string of pearls. It's a particular a pattern, but something like this coat. This coat is called the Coat of Love. It's covered with letter. You can sort of make it out. The words. Each word is another language in love, for love. So the inside is fabric. That's a new fabric from Liberty of London with a little sparkly. That is also some crazy vintage dress that I found and deconstructed. So the inspiration for my garments, I get that question a lot. Well, how do you come up with the ideas for your garment? I've always told my students, art is about problem solving. That's all it's about. So everything I do was always an answer to a problem. For example, a dress. I wanted a new dress. I don't know how to sew, so I learned how to make the dress seamlessly. It was the answer to a problem. I want to make women feel pretty. So not only did I learn to make the dress, I wanted to make it flattering and make it so that, oh, you put it on and you feel pretty. I learned style. And for me, when I think about style, what I'm most inspired by is, I guess you'd call it the bohemian look. The gypsy look, the idea that a free spirit. I mean, as I get older, one of the people that I really admire is he's a photographer, writer, Seth Ari. He's written a book called Advanced Style, and it's just about putting clothes on that make you feel good, no matter what your age. So I love making coats because the feeling of protection. The sense that I can go out into the world and it's like armor. This one, the top part, this is an interesting coat because the top part of this coat is what they call cut velvet. But it's from an old men's smoking coat. So I'd gotten a bunch of old men's smoking coats I deconstructed, and it was the most hideous color of brown you can imagine. But it's silk velvet, and then I dyed it. And the bottom part is hammered silk, which I also dyed. A lot of people like my shawls. They liked my shawls, but they didn't know what to do with all that fabric. They would say, I don't want to be just chucking it. So I said, okay, I want to make a garment that has a shawl-like effect without being a shawl. And so hence I came up with these vests, which are completely 100% reversible in many different ways. So it gives you the effect of draping something over your body. It gives you a shawl-like effect, but you don't have to worry about playing with the fabric. And then if you're walking down the street and it's going crazy, you can take the collar, tuck it into your sleeve, and it's equally as pretty. But it's like the Ginzo knife. Wait, it gets better. If your house is on fire and you run out of the house and you had to put on a garment, but you grabbed this and you grabbed it upside down and inside out. It becomes much more cowl-like. Bigger, then comes up. You can even put it up over your head. Pull it through. And you're dressed. when I got out of art school, it was quite a shock. When you're in art school, you're coddled. You have critiques. You have people you can bounce ideas off. Suddenly you're out of art school, and there's nobody there. There's nobody there. You're all by yourself. I think that's one of the reasons why a lot of young people who went in very idealistic, filled with hope and filled with the belief that they could do this, don't, because they've now left their safety net behind. So one of the things I would really recommend to young artists is to build your safety net before you leave art school. Start a crit group. Get a bunch of people together. You meet once a week for a salon, and you show each other work, and you talk about work. You make art dates with your friends. You go to shows together. You to maintain that artistic life in order to feed. Because if there's nothing out there to encourage you, it'll fall away. Because we live in a society that does not value. It does not value what we do. It really doesn't. Work for an artist. Even if it's just 1 or 2 days a week, what you will gain from working with a professional artist, which I didn't have the opportunity, is you will learn how to be an artist. It's like the Atelier program. You start at one place. Oh, this is how we do it. This is how we go get grants. This is how I can make a living and survive and do what I love to do. To find out more about me, Barbara Poole, and my company, which is BeFelt, it's www.befelt.com. And that's where you can learn where my shows are, when I'm opening my studio. You can sign up to be on my newsletter, which I don't send out too many of them. I just want to let people know when I'm having shows and what's happening in the BeFelt world.
For those dealing with the daily struggles of caring for a loved one, we hear you. That's why AARP created a community with experts and other caregivers to help us better care for ourselves and the ones we love.
Did you take your medicine?
Oh gosh, I forgot it.
Her nurse,
You need a claim number?
her personal assistant,
Let me just grab a...
her housekeeper, her cook, her accountant. When I started taking care of Mom, I didn't realize the challenge of playing so many roles. But above all, I'm still her daughter.
Visit aarp.org/caregiving to connect with experts and other caregivers. Together we can better care for ourselves and the ones we love.
I'm Barbara Poole. I'm a visual artist, and I work in a number of different mediums. Right now, I have been for the last 8 years working in textiles, specifically felt. The project I'm working on right now, the title for it is Veils of Color for Lowell, the Venice of America. That used to be Lowell's moniker, where they would call the Venice of America because of all the canals. People came from around the world to see the marvels of industry happening here, which is why I moved up here. I love the bones. When you take the canal tour, you go through a section of the canal that's called the Urban Canyon. And as you enter the Urban Canyon from the swamp walks into the Hamilton Canal, on your right side you will see a the architectural remnants, I'm not sure if that's the right word, but that's what I call it, of a building, a structure, and it's 45 ghost windows. It's just a facade of these windows with nothing in them at all. And I would walk by and look at those and think, wow, it would be a great place for an art installation. Part of that building used to be what they called the dyer's building. It was where the cloth was taken, that was white goods is what they called it, but they would bring it to this building and they would dye it, whatever color they were. And then they would take the dye and they would dump it into the canal. And I've seen pictures of the canal being red, yellow, I imagine it was other colors too. And the idea, I mean, this pre-environmental, so they didn't know. They didn't know what they were doing was really an environmental disaster, which is why a lot of it is a cleanup site. They didn't realize this. But I love the visual idea of this ribbon of color running through. And when I took the tour, I noticed that people, they couldn't quite see it. So I wanted to pay homage to that. I wanted to create a visual depiction of dumping the dye into the canal, hence these veils. And I wanted it to be transparent enough so that when you can see through it. When the light actually hits this, all you really see is the color. It looks like it's going to be pouring out of the window, this with nothing holding it together, just pouring down. All right, so let me explain a little bit about the process. This particular panel that we're looking at right now is what we call a triad in color. So a triad consists of a primary, which would be the yellow, a secondary, which would be the purple, and a tertiary, which is the red purple. The tertiary colors are the colors on the secondary color wheel that go one way, warm or cool. And in this case, this is warm. We think of red as a warm color, so this is the red purple. The fabric that I used, I wanted something sheer. I did a lot of samples and I tried canvas, and I realized what I really liked the best was when the light would go through. With the canvas, I would have it only on one side, and I realized that the people from Appleton Mills are going to be able to see this too. So I wanted to give them something also to look at, so that both sides, we would have color from both sides. If it was canvas, it would only be on one side. So now it became the search for a fabric that was transparent and sturdy enough. And this is polyester chiffon. It's pretty sturdy, and it's also very, very wide. That was the other thing. I didn't want to have to do any stitching except finish the edges. This fabric comes 120 inches wide, so the windows themselves are 58 inches wide, so I wanted something that I could trim down slightly and have it fit through the window. And I can get it on a great big huge bolt. The acrylic, the way it works is acrylic binds to the pigment, and if I start adding too much water, I start breaking up that binding, and therefore breaking up the paint's integrity, and it could flake off. So I can only add, less than 0.5% of water to make it so that it'll really start to pour really quickly. We are installing the veils of color for Lowell for the Venice of America. And I have a group of people here, all volunteers, who are helping me install this project. It's really very exciting. It's my gift to the city of Lowell. I feel really privileged to be able to do this. You can see it from the other side, on the National Park side, and you get a glimpse of it from this side, from the Appleton side, from the fence. But the other side, you can get a little closer to it from the other side and enjoy the color in a otherwise kind of urban, colorless environment. We're going to be installing a total of 35 veils. I don't think we'll get them all done today. I plan to do it over 2 days. It involves climbing 20-foot ladders. The panels themselves are 18 feet long. 4 feet of it are on the inside, then the rest of it flips out into the window, onto the canal side without touching the canal. It's above the high water mark in the canal. And right now we're working on we started with the primary colors, we're going to the secondary colors, and then the next group of colors will be the complementaries, and then the next group after that will be the analogous and then split complementaries and triads and quads, and it's just going to be this canyon of color to this urban canyon that's just usually hard brick